Good morning, beloved. This is the day that the Lord has made. I am rejoicing and being glad in the day. Welcome to an episode of Dr. M's Table. Today is Monday, my absolute favorite day of the week. It is Monday, December the 20th, and you are tuning in to an episode of Dr. M's Table. I am your table facilitator and early morning motivator, Dr. Miranda Y. Pearson. And today, I want to talk to you about something that I feel is very, very important, especially since we are embarking upon the holiday season. So I'm going to give it about 1 minute while people are logging in, tuning in, because this is actually live. And usually I do a Dr. M's Table and I stream it, but I've pre-recorded it. But today I'm actually doing it live. And so I'll give it 1 minute or two for people to come on in. Let me adjust my seat so I can see. All right. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about something, again, very important, especially since it's the holiday season, and that is depression and anxiety. The title of this Dr. M's Table is Help. Am I depressed because I feel like I'm dying inside? And so you're not suicidal, but you feel like you're dying inside. If that is you, or if that's someone that you know, or if that has been you in the past, then this is the Dr. M's Table for you. So I was reading a book. I am reading a book, and I'm doing some research on some things that I have coming up in 2022. And it just occurred to me that a lot more people than we know, a lot more people than we care to admit, and even ourselves, have been the victim of depression. And what looks like depression, or what the textbook says is depression, is not necessarily what people display or actually what we see. And so I know that in the face of social media, you have a lot of people that overcompensate, they compare themselves, they seek perfection in the things that they do, not necessarily excellence, but perfection. And so a lot of that we see is a mask for depression. So I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to demystify it. I wanted to, I guess, destigmatize it, if that's a word. And I wanted to bring less shame and less feelings of unworthiness as we talk about depression. So do me a favor, click like, click share this with your audience, share this with your people. I promise I won't be on long. I have a very long day, because if you read my previous post, today starts my vacation. I am super excited about going on Christmas vacation. It starts at 9 p.m. tonight, 9 p.m. because I have 8 clients that I am seeing on today. So back to back to back clients. But at 9 o'clock, I am free and I see no one else until January the 5th. All right. So I'm excited about that. So again, I wanted to highlight what depression is, what it is not, what does it look like compared to the textbook version, and then what it looks like in real life, what it could look like in your life. And so I wanted to start with, I guess, the definition, the textbook, the clinical definition of depression. And so I have here what's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This right here is a Bible of sorts to licensed clinical professional folk. This is what I and others like me who are licensed use to diagnose mental health conditions. Now, if you are deemed clinically depressed, it is considered a mental health diagnosis. And I wanted to compare and contrast. I wanted to tell you about the DSM-5's definition of clinical depression. Then I wanted to give you some practical examples of clinical depression and what it might look like to people that you know. All right. So let's start with that. Very important topic, I believe, because some people are slowly dying in the inside, and they're not necessarily suicidal, but they would be more than happy to go to sleep and not wake up. Now, because I'm streaming live on StreamYard, I can't see any comments. I'll see if I can pull it up on my Facebook so I can read your comments. But if you know someone in your life who is like that, please let me know in the comments. Very important. Hold on. Let me make sure that you don't hear it. Okay. Yes. All right. Please raise your hand. Let me know in the comments if you know someone who is not suicidal, which means they don't have the gumption or the testicular fortitude or the strength or the courage to do themselves in, but they would be more than happy to go to sleep and not wake up. And I've heard Christians say, I know that I would spend eternity with God, and so if it were my time to go, then I would want to go. And so there are some people who are slowly dying in the inside. And these are people that you and I know, we encounter them day to day. They seemingly are on the outside very excited, very happy. They show up, they go to work, they perform, they demonstrate. You would never know that these are the people that are slowly dying in the inside. And they have a constant battle in their mind mentally with wanting to be here and why. All right. So let's look. I'm going to turn in the DSM-5 because I want to give you the clinical definition of depression. So if you see me looking down, I'm not ignoring you. I have a plethora of notes and I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons of even getting into the meat of what I want to talk about. I should make it a class, shouldn't I? But anyway, I think it's important that this is the week of Christmas and you know what to look for. There are people around you who are smiling all the time, but they are really dying slowly in the inside. And so, listen, this is not a Dr. M's table to debate your religion or to debate whether or not I use the proper scriptures or, we can pray it away. There's some things, beloved, that you just cannot pray away. And I know I am a licensed clinical mental health provider. I am also a licensed preacher. I preach the gospel. I love Jesus Christ. I will lift up the kingdom until Jesus comes again. However, prayer works. It changes things, but you have to get to the meat of a situation. You got to get to the root of a matter and understand where and why people are depressed. So we can no longer gloss over, blanket over depression. And I'm not going to debate today whether or not people should pray more or they should just be delivered from whatever it is that they're going through, or they should do this or that, do that. I just want to give you some signs and some symptoms and some things to look for, and then what to do in the case of that. Okay, so I'm telling you that all depression is not the same. It doesn't look the same. And even after I finish telling you the textbook definition, it still doesn't sometimes look like that. But this is the definition that if you were to go to a licensed professional counselor, that they use in order to clinically diagnose you. All right. So let's do it. Because if you don't get to the bottom of depression, you begin to have not only a mental health breakdown, but your body begins to break down. And I know you've heard me say this before. Any of you who follow Dr. M, you've seen Dr. M's tables, you know that I believe wholeheartedly that a lot of the autoimmune disorders are they come from the fact that people hold stuff in. I'm a big, firm believer that you should get stuff out. However, there's a time and there's a place and there's an audience in which you do that. And there's a safe place in which you can do that. I don't necessarily think that you should use social media as your place of therapy. I don't think you should use social media as your place of airing dirty laundry or even outing people in your home, in your relationships, in your family. And so, this is not that type of Dr. M's table. However, want to just get the definition out so you can be aware. All right. Am I depressed? Let's look at the DSM-5. Now, it's very technical, which is why I'm going to give you the technical stuff first, and then I'm going to go back and put it in layman's terms, okay? So bear with me. So when I'm using the DSM-5, this is what major clinical depression looks like, okay? There are three things that I'm looking for. Number one, if the person experiences a single major depressive episode, okay? And I'll explain what all of that is. Number two, I'm also looking for another disorder that does not better explain the major depressive disorder. So, in other words, you are ruling stuff out as a clinician to make sure that when you diagnose people, this is exactly what's going on, because you're also interacting with doctors, you're interacting with psychologists, so you don't want to misdiagnose anyone. And if you know anything about insurance, in order for me to bill insurance, I have to give people a diagnosis. I don't think people understand that. A lot of people come for Christian counseling and they want to use their insurance, which I understand, because they don't want to pay the full price. However, for insurance purposes, you have to give a clinical diagnosis. All right. So, and then the third thing is the person has never had a manic, a mixed, or hypomanic episode. Manic meaning that it's extremely elevated or it's an excitable mood. So you have people who are just hype. I mean, they just, their life of the party, going, and then they crash. All right. So there's the manic behavior, and then the next day or even the next hour, in some cases, they're down, they're depressed, they don't really have a lot to say. And so you're wondering sometimes, if you're working with somebody like that, you're like, well, what happened? Like, you okay? You good? They're like, I'm fine. But then the previous day, they were hyped, they were talking loud, they were yelling, they were screaming, they were laughing, and they were excited. Okay. So that's the manic behavior, when you are extremely elevated and then you have this over the top type of mood. All right. So those are three things that you're looking for. Now go back. When I'm looking for a single depressive episode, this is what that entails. You have to have at least 5 of these 9 symptoms, with 2 of those symptoms having to be a depressed mood, and that could be irritation, and a significant reduced level of interest or pleasure in most of all activities. So before you're even diagnosed with depression, you have to have had a depressed mood, and not or, and a significant reduced level of interest or pleasure in most or all activities. Now, this has to have been occurring uh, 2 weeks or more for most of the time, almost every day. So you're talking about for 14 days straight. You have to have had a depressed mood and a significant reduced level of interest or pleasure in most or all the activities. Now, those are 2 that you have to have. Now, here are some additional things that you look for, and then I need to see 3 of those. Okay. So remember, I said have to have 5 out of 9, and then 2 of those are guaranteed, which is the 2 that I just read. So here we go. A considerable loss or gain of weight. Okay. Change in the month. You're not dieting. And so there's either a loss or a gain. There may be an increase or a decrease in the appetite. And for children, this is above an expected weight gain. Then it could be that the person is having difficulty falling or staying asleep. So they either have insomnia, which means they cannot sleep, or they sleep more than they should, which is hyposomnia. Okay, they just cannot stay awake. You can't get up in the morning to go to work. You don't want to get out of the bed. You're at work in the daytime, and then it's time for you to have break or lunch, and you find yourself in your car and you want to sleep in the car. Okay. Or you have behavior that is agitated or slowed down. Others should be able to observe this. So you are just easily agitated. I mean, everything ticks you off. You're upset because you had to wait in line at Food Line. You're mad because you're in traffic and the traffic is slowed down, and you see that there is a wreck, or you see that there's a truck, or you see that the light is changed, and you're just mad about that. Okay. But this is extra behavior. Like, you understand logically that you need to not go forth, or you need to not drive, but you get irritated. Okay. Feeling fatigued or diminished in feeling fatigued or diminished energy, thoughts of unworthiness or extreme guilt. So you don't feel worthy. Let's say you got a job or a promotion, or your boyfriend of many years asked you to marry him and you don't feel worthy of that, or you have this extreme guilt where you feel guilty about everything. It's like a false burden. Okay. Then there's an ability to think, concentrate, or make decisions that is significantly reduced. Like you cannot think, you can't make a decision. You read something and you look at it and over again, and you just cannot comprehend that. Frequent thoughts of death or suicide with or without a plan, or even an attempt of suicide. Okay. The person's symptoms do not indicate a mixed episode. The person's symptoms are cause of great distress or difficulty in functioning at home, school, on the job, anywhere else that is of importance. The person's symptoms are not caused by substance abuse use. So you're not drinking alcohol, you're not smoking weed, you're not popping pills. You are just down and depressed. And the person's symptoms are not due to normal grief or bereavement over the death of a loved one, and they continue more than 2 months. That includes great difficulty in functioning, frequent thoughts of worthlessness, thoughts of suicide, symptoms that are psychotic, or behavior that is slowed down. Now, I wanted to read the definition, the textbook definition, because I wanted you guys to understand that when you go to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a psychotherapist, which is what I am, this is what we use to clinically diagnose you. This is, again, called the DSM-5. And you have to weigh everything, which is why we ask you so many questions. Okay. Now, that's extremely difficult sometimes for people to follow. And then sometimes you have people that come to your office, they don't know how to put into words what they're feeling. And so I wanted to break it down a little bit based on the research that I've read, and give it to you in layman's terms to see if this would, that you would understand this better. Okay. So these are signs that you may be depressed. All right. You're always busy. You are super busy. Like you don't even take the time to feel anything on purpose. So if there's a death in the family, you keep it moving. You don't take time off to grieve or be in bereavement. You finish one degree and you go into another one. You work 2 and 3 jobs and you're very proud of that. Like you're always posting how many jobs you work, or how you went from this job and I work 12 hours and now I go to this job and I work 8 hours. Now, I didn't say, let me just make this plain, because you do have some folk out there who now will put in the comments, I work 2 jobs and I'm not depressed. I didn't say that you were because you work 2 jobs. What I'm saying is sometimes depression is masked in people who are overworked. All they do is work because they don't want to feel, and they don't want to be in this state of, now I got to deal with what I'm going through. We think, because of the textbook definition that I just read to you, we tend to think that a person is depressed because they lay around all the time and they don't want to do anything. And I'm telling you, it could be the opposite. And it could be that somebody just overworks all the time. They have to keep going. And if they stop, they feel like then that they will die. And then you have some people who don't want to get off the couch or want to get out of the bed. Okay. That's a sign. You also can be the type of person that something in the inside is always gnawing at you. And you would probably not know this because you're always busy, going. You probably would not know this unless you didn't pay attention to your dreams. Most of the time when people are very busy, they dream about what's eating them in the inside at night. So because you don't slow down enough to deal with your cognitions, you don't slow down enough to deal with your emotions, sometimes whatever's bothering you comes out at night. And if you are a spouse and you have your partner and you guys are in bed and your partner is always talking in their sleep, or fighting or feeling distressed, there's nothing wrong with you to ask them the next day, hey, you okay? Is everything okay? Is anything going on with you? Because if your partner is cussing folk out in their sleep, fighting in their sleep, yelling in their sleep, always jerking, maybe there's something going on in the inside that they're not talking to you about, or they're not talking to anyone about. And so it is okay for you to ask them, okay? Because sometimes people are running from something in the inside that they don't have the courage enough to talk to anybody out with on the outside, okay? Goes along with keeping everything bottled up in the inside. You have those people who do not talk about how they feel. So they let things fester and they let things overtake them and they let things boil and they let things burn. And what happens is they blow up. And so sometimes when you have people, and I know we like to say, they're always angry or they got an attitude problem. That's the number one. They got an attitude problem. Well, sometimes the person with the attitude problem, it is not that they really truly have an attitude problem. They could be suffering from depression, beloved. They really could. And so what happens is everything that they have is bottled up in the inside. Disappointments, hurt, shame, guilt, fears. And remember, I've told you this several times and I'll reiterate it again. Anger is a secondary emotion. Fear is the primary emotion. So when a person displays anger all the time, is always outbursting with something, always angry, always has to be argumentative, always fussing, fighting, and they're always agitated. There's some fear there. And so then we might begin to, ask, are you good? Is there something that's bothering you? What are you afraid of? Okay. They may not open up to you, but this is an indication of some people, they may be depressed. These are symptoms. That's not in the textbook. All right. Some people who are depressed have the inability to ask people for what they want because sometimes they have the inability to express themselves because sometimes they have the inability to be emotionally intelligent. And you know what? Let me just stick a pin right there. I think as parents, we would do it a disjustice to our children if we don't teach them at this age, as they are maturing and going through maturation, how to be emotionally intelligent. Sometimes our children get in trouble in school. They get in trouble as young adults. They even get in trouble as adults because they don't know how to adequately express what is going on in the inside of them. If they grew up around adults that always told them to stop talking and be quiet, then they adapt to that. And then when somebody says, what's wrong? What are you going through? They don't know. They don't have the ability to express themselves. So sometimes people don't know how to talk. They don't know how to adequately ask for what they need because no one has ever taught them how to be emotionally intelligent or how to express themselves in a verbal conversation. So let's do better by our children. I say that because when adults come to me and they don't know how to adequately explain themselves, it's because we didn't give them voice as children. We either didn't give them enough vocabulary, or we didn't give them enough room, or we didn't allow them to utilize critical thinking skills. That's another Dr. M's table. But anyway, just wanted to let you know that. Sometimes depression can show up in people who lie a lot. Not lie down, tell a lie. People who are very dishonest, like they lie about dumb stuff. They lie about stuff that doesn't matter. They lie about stuff that you're like wondering, like, why? Like, what was the purpose of that lie? And so people who exhibit depressed behavior lie a lot in some cases. And it probably goes back to attention. Like, you don't see me. So I don't know how to ask for what I want because I don't know how to adequately express myself. So then I tell lies. They may be so exorbitant that they, say that they did this and they didn't. Or they may be just dumb little lies that don't mean anything. You ask them where they were and they'll say, yeah, I was at so-and-so and they were never there. Okay. That could be a sign or a symptom of depression. Eating, overeating, can't wait to eat. Now, not because you're hungry, but because the sensation of chewing and putting something in your mouth, it's like a baby. It's an oral sensation of comfort. So it's like a pacifier, but we're too old to have pacifiers, right? We're too old to put our thumbs in our mouth. We're too old to suck on something as like a toy or what have you. So what do? We subconsciously, unconsciously eat. I don't care what it is. It could be peanuts. It could be potato chips. It could be candy. And you're not even hungry. Have you ever seen people like that? Like they eat a full course meal. You know they're full. And they may go into the living room or the den or whatever you have at your house to relax. And then they want a snack, but they're not hungry. It's a habit. It's learned behavior. So because you're watching TV, Pavlov's dog, classical conditioning is what it's called in psychology. Because you're watching TV, you've been conditioned to watch TV and have a snack. So people who exhibit depression overdo it. Like there's no meter in their brain to tell them to stop eating. They just do it continuously, and they do it continuously, and they do it continuously. And so, we've been taught, I guess, from movies and, even the clinical depression definition that I read to you, that, oh, when people don't eat, they must be depressed. No, when people overeat, they can be depressed. And I'm talking about just eating for no reason. Okay. And can't wait to eat because it soothes them. Again, it's a pacifier. Also, a symptom of depression could be a person who just does not have the energy to do anything. I mean, it takes forever to get dressed in the morning. It takes forever to get ready to go somewhere. Just don't want to go. And it's not a matter of anxiety necessarily about being around people. It's just the thought of extending energy to get dressed, to take a shower, to put on deodorant, to do hair, to put on makeup, to shave for the men, to do something with their hair. It's just a lot. So what they would want to do is, sometimes people who are depressed, they go from the bed to the couch. They go from the couch to the kitchen table. They go to the kitchen table, back to the couch, from the couch to the bedroom. They just don't want to exert the energy. Okay. And you have to force yourself to do everything. That is to go to work. We are somehow under the misnomer that people who show up to work are okay. Sometimes people show up to work, people, because they got to get a paycheck. That's the only reason why they go to work, because they know if they stop working, people who depend on them and their household will not run. So they go to work, but there's no enjoyment there, and they just don't want to go. It takes everything in them to get up in the morning to actually go to work. All right. You're sleeping a lot. I mean, a lot. And not only are you sleeping a lot, but you're taking stuff. So you went from taking melatonin and it didn't do what you wanted it to do. Now you're popping Benadryl. And Benadryl, I've said it before, let me say it again, is dangerous for you to take as a sleep aid because it messes with your kidneys. Stop doing it immediately. Okay? If you want to get some sleep, get some adequate sleep, you need to start working out. But that's another Dr. M's table. But people who are depressed tend to sleep a lot. Okay? And some of that is because they don't, it's not that they don't all the time want to get up. They're scared to get up. Like, what is today going to bring to me? Like, I don't even want to deal with what this day is going to do for me, to me, through me, around me, all of those prepositions. They just don't want to deal with it. All right. Can't seem to concentrate on one thing. Have you ever sat down and just cannot focus? Like, I know I have 10 things to do, but I just cannot focus on one thing. Listen, it could be depression. Um, you know, you sit down to read and you've looked at that same page 5 or 6 times and there's no connection to what you read and comprehension. So you keep doing it and you keep doing it over and over. That may be a symptom of depression. Okay. You're steadily gaining weight. We talked about the eating, but you're steadily gaining weight because you're not active, and then you're eating. I think sometimes we don't understand. I'll give you an example. So, like, if you see this right here, this is me This is my iced coffee. Now, there's probably 10,000 calories in this. I'm joking. It's probably not 10,000, but it's more than it should be. This is my, I don't want to call it a cheat meal. It's my celebration meal for the week. Yes, I'm celebrating early. Okay. With my iced coffee. And we don't realize that a lot of times we drink our calories. And so if you get a nice coffee from Starbucks and everything in that equals 1,000 calories, and then you get a nice meal from Chick-fil-A, even though you get something with grilled chicken or lettuce or whatever, it's 1,000 calories. And then you go and get something from Panera Bread, because of course that's wholesome, and then that's 1,000 calories. You have consumed 3,000 calories that day. You've only eaten 2 meals and drunk one specialty coffee, and you're still hungry. And so you gain weight, people, because you don't exert any energy to compensate for all the calories that you have ingested. So sometimes people who are depressed, they steadily gain weight, and they know they're gaining weight, which makes them even more depressed, right? So everything about life tells them that they're not good enough. So you see these ads, and you see, we'll begin to see all the Weight Watchers commercials like the week after Christmas, because they want you to start in January. Or you'll begin to see people start weight loss programs, or they'll show you their Peloton bike that they got for Christmas. And the person who is steadily gaining weight, what makes them even more depressed drives them to do even more as far as drinking and eating and what have you. And so it's a vicious cycle that it's pretty difficult to break. All right. Another symptom could be somebody not doing things that brings them joy. If you are working a job just for a paycheck and it does not bring you joy, it could make you depressed. It could really mess with your psyche. Doing things in general. A lot of us do things out of covenant or commitment or false obligation, or because we think that we should. And sometimes if that doesn't bring you joy, it makes you depressed, because you do it thinking that it's the right thing, but it's not the right thing for you. All right. The next symptom could be a person who has not been touched in months, weeks, Lord, even years. And I'm not necessarily talking about sex, but if you are married and you're not having sex, it could make you depressed. But if you are single and you are dedicated to God and you want to make sure that you are still pure, listen, you're human. You still need a human touch. Go get a massage, get a hug. There are some people who do not touch another human being. I was looking at Facebook last week, and somebody was talking about a mother in Zion and who gave the best hugs. I have a mother in Zion who gives the best hugs. They're anointed hugs. Sometimes you just need a human touch, even if that's from your dog, or even if that's from your child. My son gives the most anointed hugs. I love it when he drapes his whole big body. I say big now because he's taller than me. And I love it when he drapes across my shoulders. I welcome that. So sometimes a person who lacks bodily touch, hugs, affection, handshake, anything like that, sometimes they can be depressed, because we need people. Point blank, period. All right. And if you're married and you're not having sex and it's not because of something physical, you need to probably get some counseling to figure out why and what that's all about. And there's no shame in that. I think every marriage goes through a lull, which is a lessening of, or even a slump. Anybody who's been married for longer than 10 years, if they say that they have never gone through anything like that, they're lying. That they are. I'll say that. You're a liar. Every marriage worth its merit in covenant has gone through a lull or a stall, or something that's like, we're not really in sync. We're not in rhythm. And we need to figure out what that's all about. And so there's nothing wrong with you getting some additional help in trying to figure out what that looks like. All right. You might be depressed if you're a person who's always full of dread, like you are always waiting for the world to blow up. You know, you have some people who are like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. Or you can't watch the news. It just makes you so jittery. Or if somebody comes to you and you're like, no, no, no more bad news. Don't bring me any more bad news. You're always full of like, what's next? And people like that, honestly, I'm not making fun or light of it. Sometimes people like that are people who are always ready and waiting for the other shoe to drop because they've experienced trauma. Remember, trauma leaves an imprint on your brain. And so when you're triggered by that same imprint, then you're full of dread and you're waiting, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. That may be a symptom that you're depressed. You can be a person who's around a lot of people all the time. You may be in a sorority or fraternity. You may go out with your friends. You may be in a girls group. You may be in a sisterhood at your church, and you're around people all the time. But you're around people and you never really connect. You look at people, you talk to people, you see their lips going, you see their mouth going, and you're smiling, but the smile is not a heart smile, and it's just because you're there, and you're really never connected to people. You are disassociated from the people that you're even around. You could be depressed. All right. If you're the type of person who is never in the moment, you are never mindful. You don't mindfully eat. You don't mindfully have a conversation. You don't mindfully be in fellowship with people. Then you could be depressed. When you are always thinking about, or you're always somewhere else, or you're always worried, and even in the midst of a place that's paradise like, I mean, you could take a vacation, but you are really not enjoying yourself, you could be depressed. Okay. You've ever seen people who are snazzy dressers? Sometimes you look at them and you're like, what in the world is so and so going through? They could be depressed. They don't care anymore about what they wear. They just put on things that fit. Or maybe, just maybe, they could be a person who keeps gaining weight, and so they just keep buying stuff. So, you know, last year I'm wearing a size 12, 14. And then this year I've gained a little weight. So I'm not going to figure out, how can I get back into my 12, 14s? No, I'm going to buy a 16, 18. And then the next year, how can I get back into my 16, 18? No, I'm going to buy a 20, 22. Like these people, you don't assume that they're depressed, but it could be a symptom of depression. All right. Stay home too often. Now, I love home. And I think I've shared on one of the Dr. M's tables that I've discovered during the pandemic that I'm not as introverted as I thought that I was. But I do like me. I love me. I love spending time with me. I don't mind going out to eat by myself. I don't mind going to a movie by myself. I don't mind shopping by myself. I don't even mind vacationing by myself. I don't have a problem with me. However, I love my friends. I love being around my good girlfriends. I love to laugh. I love to giggle. I love to have fun. I love to be in a girl group, and I love my family. And so I look forward to spending time with my family. I'm not in a corner. I'm not a recluse. And so when you have people who always want to be home, like they even drive to the mailbox, and I'm not making light, honestly. But they drive to the mailbox. They don't want to go anywhere. They don't want to see people. You see the Amazon man come to their house every day. Uber Eats. They get Target to drop off their groceries. And I'm not talking about because we're in a pandemic. I'm talking about above and beyond that. So again, not making light. I understand the numbers are going back up. There's some people who don't want to be out. I get it. I'm one of those people. However, as much as I love home, I also love going and venturing out and getting new sights, new experiences, or what have you. Sometimes if a person is depressed, they stay home a lot and they call in from work more than the average person. So I can't remember how many sick days were allotted when I was working for the school system. I don't remember, but I do know this. If a person calls out of work more than twice a month, or more than 3 times a month, they may be depressed. I'm talking about like you're sick every week, something's wrong with you every week, then you may be depressed. All right. You've lost hope. A person may be depressed if they feel like they've lost hope, not only in God, but in humanity. They may be depressed. They wonder if they're having a nervous breakdown. They may be depressed. If they're crying all of the time without warning, like everything makes you cry. And I'm not talking about a Hallmark movie or the fact that someone has just died. I understand all of that. But I'm talking about just crying, crying, crying for no reason. They may be depressed. And if they wake up every morning with crippling anxiety, where they just, you wake up and you're like, they may be depressed. Okay. Now, here are some common things. And let me see, I'm looking at my time. I have about 15 minutes. Here's some common things that you may hear, okay, in people who are extremely depressed. They may be extreme negative folk. I think I shared that earlier, but they complain about everything. I mean, if you say that the sky's blue and it's beautiful, it's not that beautiful. The weatherman says it's going to rain today. I mean, just extremely negative. And they're in your people group. They may be on your job. They're showing up, but they may be depressed because they see good in nothing. They're always negative. Okay. Always negative, always complaining. Maybe they're always cussing. So like you're like, man, when did so-and-so start? They just cuss. They're letting it go. Well, what you see is coming up and out, which is irritation and anger. And so they may have been the sweetest person, but lately they're always cussing, even if they're a believer. And they'll use the excuse that, even Peter probably felt like he wanted to cuss and he cut off folks' ear. Like they'll use that as an excuse, right? And so they begin to just swear a lot and make, all these cuss words come out of their mouth. They always want someone who they have perceived. Remember, when a person has gone through trauma or they're angry or they are hurt or they're rejected, their perception is different. Okay. So this may be the type of person, a depressed person. One of these symptoms may be that they always want a person or a group of people that they perceived hurt them to really hurt, like to be destroyed. Like they're always talking about what this person has done to them, how it has affected them, or they're talking about how the person, everybody thinks that so-and-so is so good, but so-and-so is not this good. So-and-so is this, so-and-so is that. And I just want so-and-so to be destroyed. Could be depression. Okay, where there is a lingering amount of malice, anger, and unforgiveness. All right. The person may also want to fight all the time, always want to fight. They talk about it. They talk about feeling empty. They're hypersexual. They're always talking about somebody's behind or abs or pecs or, what they look like. They could be depressed. They drink too much. Yeah, even, your church girls. Where a glass of wine occasionally at an occasion can turn into a bottle every other night. Drink too much, smoke too much. The saints are smoking weed. They are. The saints are eating edibles. They are. It's a lot sometimes, and it could indicate depression. Maybe. I don't know. Spend too much money. Could be depression. Knows that there is something medically wrong with them, but cannot adequately describe to the doctor what that is. And I talked about that on the Dr. M's table where I talked about menopause, where you have all these symptoms and you don't know really how to explain what's going on, but something's going on. All right. A person who suffers from depression might be like that. They can't articulate. Goes back to not having enough language to explain what's going on with them. They could be a person that's always talking about who left them versus who stayed. This person did this for them, or this person did that for them. Or they could be the type of person who glamorizes relationships that were toxic. Could be a sign of depression. They glamorize relationships that were toxic. So they conveniently forget that the last boyfriend or the boyfriends twice removed were physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally abusive. But because they're in a current relationship, that triggers the trauma that they've already gone through. Then they glamorize the previous relationships because they really, really are displeased and depressed being in the current one. Oh yeah, guys, there's a lot. There's a lot. That's why it's not as simple and cut and dried as you going and saying, okay, I feel depressed. And so the person says, oh, you're depressed? Your doctor, your medical doctor, your primary care physician, oh, you're depressed? Okay, let me give you these antidepressants. Sometimes it's not as cut and dry as that, which is why I'm doing this Dr. M's table. All right. A person who may be depressed may be very walled, which means they're very guarded, because they're basing it on whatever else they've gone through. And so if they've been through a lot of trauma, if they've been through a lot of hurt, they've been through a lot of rejection, they're walled, they're guarded, and sometimes it's very unnecessary. So you begin to see people who post a lot about haters and people who don't like them, and they don't like them because they're, they're jealous or envy, like all of that. Sometimes that can be depression, because nobody, I promise you, is thinking about them as much as they think that people are. So it could be a sign of depression. And then transference. Whatever a person is feeling, they can transfer it onto another person. So however it is that I feel about myself, very negative feeling about myself, I can transfer that onto other people and begin now to villainize that person based on really how I feel about me. That could be a sign of depression. And then a person who is so argumentative, they argue about everything. All right, I'm running out of time. So let me just say this. These are secret indicators of pain. You can pretty much determine if a person is depressed by going through their medicine cabinet. What's in there? Is it a lot of pain medication? Is it a lot of antacids? Is it a lot of over-the-counter sleep aids? Are there a lot of herbal remedies? Always trying to figure out what's next. A person, they'll jump on the holistic bandwagon, or they'll jump on the bandwagon of trying to, get themselves healthy. They might have a weed stash. They might have an alcohol cabinet. Their refrigerator or their food cabinets can really indicate their pain level. Then their closet, their actual clothes closet, can indicate a pain level, as well as their house. You have some people who are depressed and they are hoarders. They don't like parting with things, especially if they have a history of people leaving them. And so they collect stuff, okay? Because they haven't been able to collect people. It could be an indication that they're depressed. All right, let me just go through this quickly. And these are symptoms in your body that can indicate depression. But beloved, remember, like I said about menopause or anything else, it can also be an indication of something else. So you can't necessarily go to your doctor and say, these are the symptoms that I have. And you say, I think I'm depressed. And they're going to go with that because we practice medicine. And so let me try you on this antidepressant. So here's some things that people may go through in their body when they're suffering depression: impotence, menstrual irregularities, loss of sex drive, ringing in the ears, hot and cold flashes, rapid heartbeat, chest pain, shortness of breath, chronic dermatitis, grinding of the teeth, choking sensation, like you can't swallow, abdominal pain, pains in general, aches, stiffness, headache, muscle tension, frequent urination, nausea, bouts of looseness of bowels, constipation, feeling of fullness, you haven't even eaten yet, or you take a few bites and you feel full, or heartburn. Now, this can also mean menopause or something else is going on. So you can't necessarily say, I've suffered all of this and I'm depressed. However, these are some indications of being depressed. Now, how does seeing a therapist help? How does seeing a therapist help? Listen, when you get a therapist, this is your freedom to have someone objectively see who you really are and listen to what's really going on without any judgment. Okay, a real therapist worth her salt in the license that she holds from whatever state she's licensed from or he's licensed from will never ever judge you. Okay, because we have the capacity for empathy, which means we have the ability to walk in another person's shoes. You will have an opportunity to objectively tell your truth, whatever that is. And let me tell you something, guys. It is so important. I cannot stress this enough, especially as we go into a new year, to get down into the marrow, the very bowels and the belly of yourself, and get all that junk up and out. Whatever it is, however you feel, whatever you're thinking, however shocking you think it may be to some people, get it up and get it out of you before it is housed in your body and you begin to exhibit the physical issues related to your emotional and mental distress. All right. Having a therapist affords you an honest accountability partner. Now, let me stress the word honest because I have a lot of clients that see me for whatever reason they see me and they are not honest. Now, how do I know that? Deductive reasoning, discernment, knowledge, wisdom. I do have all of that. Prophetic prowess. Yes, I know people aren't honest. I can't say you're a liar and you're not telling me the truth. I can poke, I can prod, I can use questioning, open-ended questions. But until a person is able to tell the entire truth, which unfortunately has more to do with them than other people, then they can be set free. A lot of times people come to me because they want to tell me what other people have done to them, and that's fine. We want to talk about that. But my question will always be to my clients is now, what part did you play in this situation? And the beloved, the ugly truth is you're going to have to deal with you. Really, you're going to have to deal with you in order for you to be set free. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want other people to pay for hurting them, for maiming them, for not being in the person that they need to be healed. And that's not what therapy is all about. Therapy is for you. And so you need to be honest about what's going on with you, even if it overlaps with what people have done for you. I'll listen all day long. But at the end of the day, we need to go back and figure out your part in all of that. Okay? Having a therapist also prevents you from acting out because the therapist becomes your voice of reason. I really chuckle at people, especially Christians, who come to me for therapy and I talk. Okay? So I'm not Hickama Shaw. I'm not speaking in tongues and I'm not prophesying to them, right? I'm actually talking to them so we can go through what's going on. And they'll get frustrated because they want the whole I see the Lord saying, right? Then they'll go and they'll go to somebody else and this person will say the exact same thing that I've already told them. Because you can't get away from the issue that is you. So I chuckle at that. I marvel at that. Yeah, I told you that. So I just want to let you know that when you go to a therapist, deal with you. Talk about what other people have done to you, but you have to deal with you and how you've handled all of that. All right. And then it's a burden release. It is an immediate burden release when you are able to tell your truth to another person who does not judge you. Okay? I often tell my clients, I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't have the capacity to judge you. I'm a human as well. My job is to listen objectively and to give you a different perspective and a different perception of what the situation actually is. And we can come to mutual conclusions as to how you need to heal and move forward. Okay? Now, what's next? If everything that I've said today is you and you feel like, man, I may be depressed, what do? Number one, break the silence. even if you are afraid, beloved, break the silence. Express to someone that you trust how you feel, to someone who can assist you. Where is this, my camera? To someone who can assist you, not to someone who listens to all of your business and then leaves you bleeding and wide open, to someone who can assist you. Wait a minute. And you accept the assistance. That's a big part too. Some of you like to talk to the therapist and bare your soul, but then you want the therapist to fix you. That's not my job, not to fix you. I can tell you how you can be fixed and how things can be remedied in your life, but my job is not to fix you. And so make sure that when you are disclosing your intimate, awful truth, that you're talking to someone who can actually help you. Okay? That someone that won't leave you open and bleeding and you just told it all your business to and there's no solution. All right? So break the silence. Even if you do it afraid. And then I want you to just remember this as we close. I think I have about 4 minutes. Depression and or anxiety or whatever else that you feel like you're suffering from are not testaments to your character. They are not signs that you are a weak individual, beloved. Okay? You are not that. You are not Miranda, the anxiety one, or depressed. Here comes depressed Miranda. No, you've had an episode. You've had a season. You've had a moment. You've had something in your life that indicated this particular era, but it can end. It does not necessarily define who you are. It defines a moment in your lifetime. Okay? Let's get out of our head that we become what we've been diagnosed. And that, I guess that comes from the world. That comes from, like I said earlier, the clinical diagnosis. Yes, it does follow you. It does. It's on your insurance. I don't know how it feels when I don't know about the employer and all that stuff. But I do know that when you use your insurance, I have to diagnose you with a mental health disorder. And that's unfortunate. All right. In some cases it's needed. So the problem lies in the fact that so many physical symptoms, remember I said this, resemble what depression looks like. So I want you to know that what you experience is not who you are. Okay. That's not your character. All right. Now listen, because I'm on StreamYard, I can't see any comments, but I'm gonna look real quick because I have 2 minutes before I am logging on with my first client for today. And I'm so super stoked about how many people are watching. I don't see comments. All right. Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns before I log off? I didn't even get to the meat of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to introduce how depression does not necessarily look like a textbook, and it does not necessarily look like your neighbor, and it does not necessarily look like what you suffered in 98. It could be something totally different. I'll just be completely transparent and say that I went through a period of depression after my mom died. My grandmother died in January. I graduated from college with my PhD in March, and my mother died in October. Okay, you do the math. January, grandmother died, graduated in March. My mother died in October. That was of 2017. Now, my way of dealing with stress, period, is to keep working, which is probably all Black women that I know, right? The pandemic forced me to sit on my porch and be still and know. And that's when I dealt with the bulk of what was depression, what I know to be depression. And so what I'm saying to you is no one is immune. And it looked like I was good because I was still showing up. I was still performing. I was still doing. But I had not really dealt with the fact that I had so much loss in 1 year as well as gain. And so I had to deal with that. Thank God that I was able to deal with it and deal with it with someone that I trusted, and with the Lord's assistance. So I'm just saying to you, beloved, no one is immune. Get yourself some help and do not enter into 2022 knowing that you are depressed. Get yourself a therapist. All right? All right, beloved. My time is over. It is 11 o'clock. I love you with the love of the Lord. And as always, I sign off by saying, Shalom, shalom.